This time I would like to introduce our very special guest who will be giving our keynote address, Mr. Paul Graham, the editor of the Palmetto Partisan Journal.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my high honor and distinct privilege to be addressing you this day at this place, honoring the memory of our fathers at the Confederate Soldiers Monument. With the sentinel ever vigilant, eyes northward, flanked by the flag under which our sires fought. It is a historical flag at a historical monument. Anyone who is still confused about the meaning of this display is either ignorant, dishonest, or willing to use falsehoods to further a political or social agenda. A little nervous being up here. Thank you. All right, I feel better. For some reason, they believe that their lives will be improved if the memories of our fathers and their struggle for independence is effaced from the earth. For some reason, they have come to believe the worst of us, their neighbors, who harbor no ill will towards them. It would take far more, however, than the removal of these memorials to efface the memory of our fathers and our affection for them. Unlike those who believe these symbols represent hatred, an unnatural attachment to the past, or the byproducts of some sort of mental deficiency, which they have called the Confederacy of the Mind, they most assuredly are not. It is not our minds that are Confederate. It is our hearts, it is our blood, it is our bones that is Confederate. And although sadly there are no few who are willing to openly say this, I, however, am not ashamed nor afraid to be who and what I am, and neither should you. In this present tense ideological world in which we live, it's easy to lose sight of this simple fact that the men who we memorialize today are not abstractions. They are not ideas. They are not political brickbats. They are not flags. They are not monuments. They are not songs. They are our fathers. Quite literally, our fathers. They were real men who faced real difficulties, men who reacted to a situation to the best of their ability and did so with dignity and honor. Their actions were motivated by sound principle and a deep and abiding love for their country. A country that was not merely defined by government, territorial integrity, or abstract propositions. Theirs was a real and tangible country, a country of kith and kin, blood and soil, headstones, and homesteads, things worth defending, things worth dying for. As their children, we have ample reason to be proud, indeed to celebrate, commemorate, and memorialize our sires. Not only them, but our Confederate mothers as well, who sacrificed just as much, if not more in many cases, than did our fathers. The biblical injunction is clear. Honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. The monuments raised to honor and remember our Confederate fathers that bespeckled the Southland, found in just about every southern city, town, village, or hamlet, not only honor them, but I believe were purposely erected to serve a far more important end, to preserve their heritage and their struggle. It is easy to rewrite a history book, but not so easy to remove a granite marker. The loss of their history was a very real concern, especially after military defeat, in a decade of military occupation. Even as early as January of 1864, General Patrick Cleburne warned what surely should come to pass should the South fail in gaining their independence. The history of this heroic struggle, he says, will be written by the enemy, that our youth will be trained by Northern school teachers and will learn from Northern school books their version of the war. We'll be impressed by the influences of history and education to regard our gallant dead as traitors and our maimed veterans as fit object for derision. History has proven these words to be prophetic. Only now it is not only Northern school books and teachers, it is Southern ones as well that view our fathers and their fathers thusly. Our very presence at this service today is widely viewed with suspicion and curiosity at best, but mostly as an offensive and odious act, an act of violence against the sensibilities of certain people who believe that any reminder of our family somehow disrespects theirs. We deny this without equivocation and proclaim to the world that we have a right to exist, that we have a right to be who and what we are. And we also say as respectfully as possible that we cannot stand by and be insulted and castigated, that we will not allow the memory of our fathers to be treated so carelessly, and most assuredly we will do all in our power and, if need be, fight the cultural genocide that has been declared upon our people, living and dead. We have not only the right to exist, but more important, an obligation to exist, to pass on to those generations who follow the truth about their fathers, and thus the truth about themselves. General Robert E. Lee once said that a nation, people, which does not remember what it was yesterday, does not know what it is today. How can we possibly know where we are if we cannot or will not remember where we came from? How can future generations know where they are if we fail to preserve the memory of our common past? But there is more. We also need to know where we're going. Plotting a course without a starting point is destined for failure. Edmund Burke, speaking in the 1780s, wisely observed that society is an open-ended partnership between generations, that the dead and the unborn are as much a member of society as the living. To dishonor the dead is to reject the relations on which society is built, a relation of obligations between generations. Those who have lost respect for the dead have ceased to be trustees of their inheritance. Those that have lost, inevitably, therefore, they lose their sense of obligation to the future. And the web of obligation shrinks to the present tense. We are now living, indeed, in a world, a society that views itself in the present tense, with no roots whatsoever, completely separated from historical context. In this condition, they run headlong into the future, deaf, dumb, and blind. As this country continues to stagnate economically, as the few liberties we currently enjoy are under constant threat, and as the social underpinnings that once connected family, faith, and community buckle under the weight of the constant assault of popular culture and public policy, we stand here today and point to this monument and flag. And the men and women of the Confederate era, our own mothers and fathers, as shining examples of who we are and what we can and must be. These memorials we make and have been made as a service may serve as a reminder not only to us, but to the world at large, that there once existed a people willing to stand up and say, no more, to sacrifice all for the sake of what was then and remains today true and eternal. Remembering our fathers, knowing where we came from, and knowing where we are, is a necessary precondition if we wish to steer the Titanic on which we are traveling away from the proverbial iceberg. By honoring and remembering our fathers, reclaiming their history, our history, we place ourselves in a position to take the long view just as they did. Grasping hands to the generations, one reaching back to our fathers, the other reaching forward to our children, we occupy the causal position that they once held. The dead can only teach and advise by character and conduct and the effects that linger. Future generations, however, will inherit for better or for worse what we leave behind. By memorializing our fathers, we realize the call that they answer in our rooms and our ears for the memory of our fathers, for the inheritance of our children, and for the sake of duty itself. Next to our obligation to God, we have no higher duty than that to our families. Those who have passed, those that are here with us today, and those who will follow us. To our shame, we have allowed those who would insult and denigrate the good name and character of our fathers to dictate the terms and language of their so-called defense, as if they needed one. We have nothing to be ashamed, nothing that needs defending. If anyone needs defending, it is those who hold that the invasion of these sovereign states in 1861 was anything more than an illegal and unjustified act of aggression. But I digress. My point is this. We must find the courage to follow their brave and principled example, never apologize for who and what they were and who and what we are. Every people has a story, and we have ours. It is our birthright, it is our inheritance, and as such, it is our most solemn duty to hold it sacred. God save the South.